You ever had that moment? Someone praises you for something you're good at, playing an instrument or maybe speaking another language, and it just feels a little hollow? Like you're supposed to be happy, but for some reason the compliment just doesn't hit right? Well, we're going to dive into that feeling because it's actually at the core of a really powerful idea about what it really means to get good at something.
I mean, it's such a weird paradox, right? We put in all this work, all these hours to get better, and then when someone just slaps the label good on it, it feels like they totally missed the point. So what is the point then? If it's not about just being good, what are we all working towards?
Well, the answer, or at least a really fascinating one, comes from a musician and therapist named Mizuki Maho. See, for her, this wasn't just some philosophical question. No, it was a deeply personal breakthrough, something that completely changed how she saw her own music.
And her whole philosophy really boils down to this. It's not about throwing improvement out the window. Not at all. She's saying, look, being technically good is fine, but it's just one little piece of a much, much bigger picture, a way more meaningful one. So what's the rest of that picture look like?
Okay, so to really get it, we have to kind of shift our whole perspective on what the goal even is. It's about moving away from that simple label of good and towards something way more personal.
So the term Mizuki Maho uses for this is, and I'll try my best here, omoe dori no enso. It basically translates to the performance I envision. Think about that. It's not about playing the notes perfectly. It's about taking the music that's living inside your head and bringing it out into the real world, just the way you hear it. It's a creative act, not just a technical one. Your skill, that's just the tool you use to make your vision a reality.
So you have to wonder, where did this idea even come from? Well, it turns out it was forged in a childhood that, honestly, is almost impossible for us to imagine today. It was really quiet. I mean, just look at this contrast. Today, if you want to learn something, you're drowning in examples, right? YouTube tutorials, Spotify, a million different recordings of the same song. But for Maho back then, she had almost none of that. Her teacher would play a piece once for a few minutes, and that was it. She owned a grand total of 3 records, and then the record player broke. Just imagine that.
So what does that do to your motivation? It changes everything. See, she wasn't practicing to get praised, and she couldn't practice to sound like some recordings she heard, because there were no recordings. She practiced for one simple reason. It was the only way she could actually hear the music she loved. She literally had to create it herself, pulling it right off the page. It's like being an explorer, discovering the sound for the very first time.
And there was something else missing from her childhood environment too, praise. Her parents would tell her brother his singing was great, but her piano playing, nothing. Now, you can imagine how frustrating that must have been for a kid, but it forced her to learn a really powerful lesson, and early on. Her joy couldn't depend on what other people said. It had to come from inside her, from that personal win of figuring out a piece of music and making it sound right to her.
Okay, so fast forward years later. An idea from a totally different world, learning a new language, is what finally gave her the perfect words for this feeling she'd had about music her whole life.
She read this in a book about learning English. And bam, it just clicked. And it makes so much sense when you think about it. When someone is truly fluent in English, you don't say, wow, your English is good, do you? No, you just have a conversation with them. You respond to what they're saying, to their jokes, to their ideas. The skill itself, the English, it completely disappears. It becomes invisible.
And this gives us a kind of roadmap to mastery for pretty much any skill. So, first, you're a beginner, nobody really says anything. Then, you hit that tricky middle stage, the you're getting good stage. This is where people notice your technique, but the real goal, the end of the road, is fluency. That's when your skill becomes so natural that it just vanishes. And for a musician, that's when the audience stops hearing how difficult the chords are, and they just start feeling the music.
So what does this actually look like in the real world? When a musician is up on stage, performing for a crowd.
Well, Maho tells this story about playing shows, right? She's often the unknown artist at some new venue. She's up there, pouring everything she has into the music. And after the set, she'd overhear people in the audience whispering, and it was always the same thing, over and over. I don't know who she is, but she's good.
And you'd think that's a compliment, right? But for her, it was just crushing. It was proof that she was still stuck in that intermediate good phase. It meant the audience was still seeing the how. They were noticing her skill, her technique. They weren't just lost in the music itself. Her playing hadn't become invisible yet.
So what was she hoping to hear instead?
It wasn't about a better compliment. It was about connection. She wanted to hear things that were an invitation, a sign that her music had actually done something, that it reached out and made someone want to get closer. That was the real sign of success for her.
Now hold on. It's really easy to get the wrong idea here. If being good isn't the main goal, does that mean practice doesn't matter? Can you just, wing it and focus on the feeling?
Absolutely not, and Maho is super clear about this. Your technical skill is crucial. It is the tool, the only tool that lets you bring your vision to life. You can't build a gorgeous house if you don't know how to use a hammer and saw. And in the same way, you can't create that amazing music that's in your head if you don't have the chops to play it.
So it all comes down to balance. Look, we all have a limited budget of time and energy and focus, right? If you spend, let's say, 80% of that budget just on technique, just chasing that good label, then you're starving the other part of you that's just as important, the part that develops your own unique voice, your expression. The whole idea is to spend your energy wisely, to make sure you're feeding the entire musical vision, not just one part of it.
And that, of course, brings this whole thing back to you. And this isn't just about music. It could be art, coding, sports, whatever it is that you pour your heart into. It's a really good question to ask yourself. Are you practicing just to get the label, to have someone call you good? Or are you working to shrink that gap between the amazing, unique vision you have in your head and what you can actually create in the real world? Because in the end, that journey, well, that might be the most rewarding one there is.